we grew up, my sister, brother, and I, we all grew up in a pastor's home. My dad was a pastor, so he was a pastor at a church in Wellington, not too far from where we live now, actually. Things were going really well. I mean, and looking at our lives, I know that, I mean, I grew up in a very stable home with two wonderful parents that loved the Lord and served the Lord, that didn't hurt me or abuse me or anything. I mean, it was a good, stable home.
I mean, before everything happened, me and Danny were just like, I don't know, it seemed like a normal brother and sister relationship. A lot of his friends were my friends. We all went to the same church and were very involved in our youth group. And he loved to play the drums, and he was like on our Bible quiz team. We were just pastor's kids. And I mean, we fought like brother and sister. Everything felt normal.
Going back, I was 21 at the time. Andy was 22. We were recently married a few years prior, living in an apartment in Wellington. My sister Holly was working, still living at home with my mom and dad. My brother also living at home with my mom and dad. And that night, we were supposed to go over the Indians at that time. Now they're the Guardians, but the Indians were playing in the playoffs. We were going to go eat dinner, watch the playoffs as a family, and just have a nice evening. We had a few stops along the way, and when we got to my parents' house, we could tell that something was not right because my brother met us at the door. He was just acting very strange, telling us that mom and dad just had a fight and to go away and just come back at a different time. And I could hear, I don't know if you heard or I heard,
Yeah,
my dad.
I could hear him inside,
like trying
he was
to
like moaning. I was like, that's kind of strange. Pushed my way into the door. Danny was blocking the door, and I was just like stepped back, and my mouth just opened, like, because I thought it was a Halloween prank, is what I thought at first. Was trying to rationalize what I was seeing.
It was a very gruesome scene. I don't know how else to explain it, but he was shot kind of in the facial area, blood everywhere. We were just trying to figure out what was happening. My mom, we checked her pulse. There was no pulse. My dad was critically ill, critically injured, and we called 911.
Danny came out of the bedroom at one point and picked the gun up, and I ran at him, grabbed it out of his hand, and then he grabbed the keys to their van and then took off.
And I'm just working with good friends of mine, and I was on my break, and I get this call, and they're trying to figure out how to tell me over the phone, and I was like, tell me what's going on. And then everything just was different. And I remember them telling me to stay there, to not go anywhere. Someone was going to come get me, but I don't listen to anyone. So I got my keys and I took off through Wellington trying to get home. Probably not the best thing to do when you hear devastating news. And I remember as I'm driving through Wellington trying to wrap my mind around what's going on, and I see a whole bunch of police lights kind of up on the left. And as I'm driving by and I look over and I see our family van kind of crashed up on the side of the curb because my brother took it and ran after he did what he did. As I got out of the car, Heidi and Andy were there. People from my church were already there. They somehow found out and were there to support us. And I remember Heidi coming up to me and I asked her where dad is, where mom is, and my dad was taken to the hospital, life flighted to Metro, and So I was like, well, where's mom? Where's she at? And I remember Heidi pausing and just looking at me, and she didn't say anything for a second. And then she told me that she's still in our house because she didn't make it. I couldn't cry. I couldn't even talk. Like, there were just nothing. I'm pretty sure we were all in a state of shock. And having to sit outside on the cold pavement and try to write down our witness statements and things of what was going on, it was just, my dad was in a coma, an induced medical coma, for probably about a month, I think. I can't remember if it was 2 weeks or a month, but it was a while to help him to heal and get better, and he did end up pulling through. But then there was the point when he woke up and we had to tell him about our mom, and that was rough all over again.
At that point, Andy and I, we moved in with him because he needed care. And so our lives were just completely turned upside down.
You just can't fathom that someone you love, someone that you grew up with, could do something so terrible and so heinous. Like, I was just like, who is this person that I've lived with this whole time to be able to do something like that? I don't even know how to connect those dots.
Andy has had to face and is now facing very serious consequences of what he did on October 20th, 2007. I love you, Andy. And I believe God is a God of forgiveness and a God of second chances. Although God does not remove consequences, He doesn't. But He does give second chances, and I'm asking that Danny, in his lifetime, would have a second chance. Danny can set an example for other young people not to get involved and do the things that he did, and I believe he can do that. I believe that may be a calling upon his life to do that. Thank you.
It changes you, but you step back and you look at it and you say that was a terrible thing, but you can see that there's good on the other side of it.
What good can come of all of this? And it's not until, really honestly, in the past few years where I've really been able to look back and process and grieve for myself, really. Mm-hmm. And finally have been able to kind of see some of God's plan and purpose in all of it.
I'm not going to say everything was peachy, but God was with me through all of it. First, I was able to forgive Danny, and that's an amazing thing in itself. I can tell you that God definitely had a purpose for all of this. And even now, 18 years later, I've gone to New Jersey, to New Orleans, to Pennsylvania, churches in Ohio. I think I spoke in Keystone Schools as well, which is more local, and able to use my family's testimony to minister to those in other churches and different places and different outreaches, and speak about forgiveness and following God and trusting Him no matter what. And so God has used me in that area, and my dad has been able to speak in a ton of different places too. And so He's used both of us and more people in my family to minister and to spread His gospel to people around the U.S.
He's allowed us all to have the ability to forgive. Doesn't mean we forget, and it doesn't mean that everything's perfect in the relationship with my brother, but He's allowed us to forgive and release that. I would not have the love and the desire and the relationship with God that I do now if it wasn't for that trial. I would not have the longing and the desire and the hope that I have, that I know what's coming after this life, if it wasn't for what we've been through.
When you go through a difficult situation like the story of Job, God initiated that conversation. Have you considered my servant Job? You know, in the end, you see that, you know, God's in control and he knows what he's doing, and we don't. We only see a little piece of the picture.
It's just awesome to see like what happened and where we've come from, like where my family has come from that, and where I am now and Luke is now and our 2 daughters, and how God uses us to minister to those around us. And now I can better help people that maybe go through a tragedy if needed.
Looking back, you know, I don't know what lies ahead. I don't know what's going to happen ahead, but I know what he's done for my life, and I know where he's brought me from. And there's no way that you could tell me that he's not going to get me through whatever lies ahead.